We're less than 2 weeks out from college football season. Really, college football season starts this weekend, but Nebraska season specifically starts on August 31st. So, Adam and I decided to come on here, get some of his preseason predictions, hear about what he's been up to this offseason because Adam is coming back strong. I think you said you're recording your first show back today, and we're excited to have you because the Nebraska content creator community isn't the same when we're not all out here pushing out videos together.
Yeah, I'm excited. Actually, going to record the first Chronicles in a few months and then release it this Sunday at August 25th, 6 p.m. Central Time this Sunday evening. And then I'll also be recording, and we're going to be talking about will Dylan Raiola live up to the hype? And I'll just let that lay, and people can react to that headline however they'd like to. All right, kind of have some fun with that and then watch the show and see where I actually go with it. But then I'm going to be interviewing the GOAT, legendary coach Tom Osborne, and that'll come out a day or two after. So August 26th, August 27th, something like that. So we're pretty excited.
One of the things I talk to people the most about why they should follow your channel is because you have these ridiculously hard interviews to get. And obviously, you can get them because you have that background being a former player. So I think that's what I look forward to most when I go to look over at your channel. What new interviews does Adam have and who's he getting to talk to this week? But Adam, I'm sure you've been following recruiting. Yesterday, or actually this weekend, I guess it was Saturday, David Sanders, five-star offensive tackle, a player that Nebraska felt like they were in the running for. Obviously, a lot of fans hoped that they'd be able to get him. Ended up committing to Tennessee. And I wanted to know what your thoughts were on him committing. Obviously, it's way early in the process. We've got this entire season to see how things play out. But what's it going to take for Nebraska to actually land players of that caliber? Because that's the next step in Nebraska becoming great.
Win, win more games. I mean, that's the biggest thing, and Tennessee is kind of on the upswing. People anticipate, including myself, I've watched some of your videos yourself as well, Nebraska to be on the upswing. But if Nebraska starts winning some of these games, beat UTEP, then beat Colorado on a national stage, and then win the games that you're supposed to, Northern Iowa, Illinois, all these games are at home. It's very possible. I'm not writing in chalk, in pen, I should say, that they're going to start 4-0. But if you do that, that creates a buzz, that creates excitement, and makes it more exciting to come visit Lincoln. If you can get these recruits in front of Husker Nation in Memorial Stadium, they're going to be way more likely to commit. But it all starts with winning more games, and especially some of these games on a national stage.
That's how you get to be taken seriously. Well, I think times are different right now, 2024 versus back when you were being recruited in what, 2004? What were the main selling points you were hearing back then when you were coming out of high school for why you needed to come to Nebraska?
So my senior year I graduated in the summer of '02. So my true freshman year was that fall of 2002. So 99, 2000, 2001 being recruited. You got to remember, it was a different time. Nebraska won the Big 12 Conference Championship, finished number 2, number 3 in the country, behind Florida State, Va Tech, and then Nebraska was playing in the Rose Bowl. Even in 2000, they went 10-2 and destroyed Northwestern in the Alamo Bowl that year. So it was a different time. Okay, and there were different things you looked at. For me personally, I grew up dreaming of playing for Nebraska. So it was an interesting process. I've hinted at it here and there in the past, and I think years ago I may have shared the whole story, and maybe at some point I'll do it again. But they actually looked at me at one point and said, "You're not good enough to play here." And I had more offers as a quarterback. I was not an option quarterback, so that was not in the cards for me to come to Nebraska as an option quarterback. But I was getting more offers as a quarterback than I was a D end. And then as far as D end, Nebraska said, "You're not good enough to play here." And long story short, it ended up working out. But for me, that was my lifelong dream coming true, coming to play at the University of Nebraska. But when you think about selling points for Nebraska, I think nowadays it's come be a part of something. Come, like when Dylan Raiola committed to Georgia and then decommitted, came to Nebraska, he flat out said he didn't want to be a spoke on a wheel. Like, you can come here and you can be a part of the building process, and you can have a legacy of, hey, you helped build this program up, and that's what you're known for. And you come and you do something like that here at the University of Nebraska, and you're going to be known for that for the rest of your life. It's an opportunity to be a part of a building process. It's an opportunity to do something that's unique, that's something that's special, at a place that is special, and a place that's going to revere you for it.
It's funny, 20 years later, and the selling points are completely different. Like you said, for you, it was all about we win football games. And today it's about come be a part of something that we're building, come be a part of the tradition and something that's really strong inside and internally. But the wins have to match up to really land those top guys. Another question following up to what you just said then. If you wouldn't have gone to Nebraska, where do you think you would have played football?
Oh man, that's a loaded question. So you got to keep in mind, I was born in Hastings, lived there till I was 3. Then my dad's job took me upstate of Washington, so I actually grew up in Washington State. Nobody in my school cared about Nebraska football. It was just me. By the way, random sidebar. Nebraska beats Miami to win the national title. I have nobody to share it with. Nebraska destroys Florida. Nobody cared the next day at school, but I cared. I represented the Big Red. That's all right. It's part of the reason I love living in Nebraska now, living in Lincoln now. But where's your original question? I went on a sidebar and lost my train of thought.
I wanted to know what school you would have been playing at if you
Oh,
never went to Nebraska.
I actually really liked Oregon. I really liked Oregon at the time. And you got to keep in mind, this was fresh off the heels. Go back and watch that Rose Bowl when they played Penn State. They're in the puke green and yellow uniforms. They got the angry Daffy Duck coming out of the side of the hill. It was a much different time for Oregon. They were not Oregon of now. They were kind of molding into it was Joey Harrington's senior year, was my senior year of high school. So they kind of had the darker green and they were molding into the 14 trillion uniforms and they had the black that they were incorporating in.
The branding
But
was
when you went,
coming.
it was on its way. All right. It was something that Maryland has tried to do and failed at miserably, but Oregon has succeeded at wildly, to their credit. And so I really liked Eugene. I really liked Oregon. They had incredible facilities that were ahead of almost every other college. Like Nebraska and Oregon had the two best facilities at the time. And admittedly, every summer, my dad and I would drive 8 hours from where we lived and we'd go ride four-wheelers on the coast of Oregon. And so if you go to Winchester Bay, Coos Bay, Florence, Oregon, we'd get up at 7, eat breakfast. We'd ride all day, just stop for lunch. So 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., maybe stop for an hour lunch. And we do it 7 days straight and we never cover the same ground twice. So I always kind of liked Oregon. I was partial to them because of that. Oregon State, my football team actually went to their high school football team, went to their camp 4 years in a row. You got to keep in mind they were fresh off the heels of Steven Jackson, Jonathan Smith, Ken Simonson, Chadwick Josinko, TJ Hushmanzada. They were really good at that point in time. I was 2 hours from Pullman, Washington, and Washington State's always been good. Then they're awful, good, then they're awful. So they always yo-yo. Never much cared for the Huskies. And they didn't show a lot of interest in me. And actually, I just saw Rick Neuheisel the other day at Big Ten Media Days, and it didn't even dawn on this is how much I don't care that they didn't really recruit me because I wasn't interested in them. It didn't dawn on me till after we interviewed him on 93.7 The Tick. I was like, that was the coach that never was interested in me. I should have called him out on it. But that's how much I didn't really care about the University of Washington. I always rooted for the Cougars, and then probably Oregon or even Oregon State maybe
Crazy. It
at the
could have
time. Dennis
been Pac
Erickson.
12 Adam Carriker if it wasn't
Yeah.
Big 12.
Yeah. Dennis Erickson was the head coach at Oregon State at the time. So, yeah,
Wow.
one of those probably.
It's a great story. Okay, so going back to Big Ten Media Days, what was the vibe there, the energy around Nebraska? Like, what was your takeaway from the other people who were there, not Nebraska media, not people who were particularly interested in Nebraska football? Do you feel like they have a little bit more respect for what Matt Rule's doing than what they had before when Frost was in charge?
I think there's a curiosity, is how I would describe it. They're not buying in yet, but they're curious. What's going on over there? What are they doing? Is Matt Rule going to do it again? He did it at Temple. He did it at Baylor. Nebraska's even better equipped to do such things as rebuild a program. What's going on over there? That's kind of the vibe I get. Like they're interested. They're not serious yet, but they're curious. That's kind of the vibe I got.
I think that's fair. And I think what Matt Rule's putting out, or at least letting get out from the videos that they're pushing on YouTube, and obviously what he's saying in his interviews at the press conferences, I think it's making people think, this is some serious conversation that he's having that sounds high level. It sounds like he knows what he's doing. It's CEO talk. And it's not just a sloppy coach going out there and talking about the X's and O's. There's a plan that he's trying to execute. And if he does make it come to fruition, then this team could be looking pretty good. I saw you last year at the Michigan game. You were walking around with your son. By the way, guys, Adam is impossible to miss. He's huge. So when I was walking, I was like, God, that guy's tall. And then I looked up, I was like, oh, there's Adam Carriker. You said you lived in Lincoln. So what games are you going to this season?
Well, we're gonna take all the kids to UTEP right out the gate. We always take them to one game, make sure we always go. So we're gonna go to UTEP right out the gate. And then after that, we'll see. It's gonna be interesting because obviously, now that we're directly in Lincoln, we just moved directly back to Lincoln. We can go to any game that we want to. Admittedly, I love going to games. There's nothing like Memorial Stadium and Husker Nation, but sometimes I do find it easier to do my gut reactions, which are right after the game's over. So I don't have a whole lot of time to analyze and do things. That's kind of the point of a gut reaction. But sometimes it's easier if I'm at home because the TV angle is actually better because I'm always on the sidelines with former teammates, which is awesome and phenomenal, and I love it. But the TV angle is actually better on TV. The camera angle, I should say, is better on TV. I can rewatch anything I want. I can look up on Google. I can those 15 pages of notes are very, very real. Those are taken throughout the game. So we'll see how it happens. I wanna go to UTEP. I wanna bring all the family to that. Who probably Colorado. We'll see what all games we end up going to. But man, it's just so much easier when I can just sit there and just work and do things and pay attention, and then if I lose my mind because something good or bad happens, there's nobody else around, so it's okay.
I'm in the
But anyway,
exact
we'll
same
see.
boat as you. It's a party environment. It's fun to be there, but it's really hard to focus on it from a work aspect when you're trying to take notes, but you're distracted by people wanting to talk about the game and the angle. So I totally understand. Well, given that you're going to at least go to UTEP and Colorado, because those are two of the biggest games, I want to know what you think the most important game of the season is. You've got UTEP, obviously the first game of the season, but really there's Colorado, at Ohio State, at USC, Wisconsin, at Iowa. What do you think the most important game of the season is, or most pivotal?
Man, it's weird to say Colorado because it's not even a Big Ten conference game. But to me, I kinda said it earlier, beat UTEP and you beat Colorado and Coach Prime and all the attention that's gonna be on that game and finally beat Colorado because they've had our number recently, get a little bit of revenge and do it on a national stage, and all of a sudden you're 2-0. You got momentum, you just won a big game, you just beat our little brother. I'm not gonna call him a rival. Our little brother. Okay, you get a little bit of revenge. Revenge. You should beat Northern Iowa the next week. You're gonna be favored versus Illinois. Like, it really gets the ball rolling. It really gets the momentum rolling is that Colorado game. Now, if you lose Colorado and you're 1-1, then you beat Northern Iowa, you're 2-1. Maybe you beat Illinois, you're 3-1. That's not the worst thing in the world. Okay, but I just think there's so much momentum, and we need to get what would be considered a primetime win or a win over a really good team or just something that's along the lines of a big win. We haven't had that for quite a while here, and so I just really think that would get the momentum and the ball rolling for the rest of the season. Now, let's say we don't win the Colorado game. I would actually hearken to the Rutgers game October 5th, okay? Because that Rutgers team, they don't play Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin, Iowa. They have the second most amount of returning production in the entire Big Ten Conference. They're a team that could be ranked when by the end of the season, and they're a team that could be undefeated and maybe only one loss when they roll in here. It's Rutgers. So people aren't going to be uber excited. But that could be a pivotal game. And then the last two games of the year, Wisconsin and Iowa, always close, always comes down to the end, and maybe a bowl game's on the line, maybe 8 wins, whatever the case may be. Those are the games I'm gonna come to trying to find a Big Ten conference game, depending on how that Colorado game goes. But I'm gonna go to the Colorado game because that's going to either get us a lot of momentum right out the gate or not, which feels weird to say about a non-Big Ten team.
Yeah, but it's a team who Nebraska hates right now, and the entire country is rallying behind Nebraska to beat them. This isn't just for Nebraska fans. This is for college football's fan base as a whole because they do not like all the talking. They don't like all this hype that's honestly created by other people like the media, and they're just ready to see that get taken down. Let's talk about worst case scenario real quick. Let's say Nebraska does lose that game to Colorado. What's the floor for this team this season?
I think the floor is 6-6. Um, he, so when we interviewed Matt Rule of Big Ten Media Days, he looked at us at one point. He said, "If we don't go 6-6, we got real problems." And I would agree with that. This is not a brutal schedule. Okay, it's a fairly manageable Big Ten type schedule. So you look at the first 7 games, talked about it 18 billion times, but Colorado and Rutgers are probably the two toughest teams. You know, Purdue on the road is going to be Dylan Raiola's first road game in college. Maybe Indiana's better than people think. That's another road game. But those first 7 games were all manageable. And none of those teams really want to play defense outside of Rutgers. Okay, Ohio State, you're obviously going to be a big-time underdog. UCLA, I mean, Deshaun Foster, first-year head coach, never been an offensive coordinator, never called plays. And I know he's got an experienced offensive coordinator there in Eric Bieniemy, so he can kind of lean on him this first year. But that's a program that's way more up in the air than most programs in the Big Ten. So worst case scenario. All right. We lose to Colorado. Maybe we lose to Rutgers. I mean, if Nebraska's not 5-2 after 7 games, we got real problems. Okay, lose to Ohio State. This is worst case. You put me in this position, Connor. This
Hey,
is on you.
this is
All
from the
right.
comments. These are what people in the comments are talking about, and I'm just trying to
All right.
clarify what realistic could happen, what realistically
All
could
right. Well,
happen.
I'm still blaming you, just so you know. You're the one who asked me the question. All right. So Ohio State lose. All right, 5-3. All right, beat UCLA 6-3, and then you lose the last 3 games. USC, Wisconsin, Iowa, you end up 6-6. To me, that's worst case scenario.
I'm in the same boat as you. People try and say, well, no, they could lose, or they could only win 4 or 5. I don't think that's realistic. I think there's enough improvement on this team that last year was absolute rock bottom for what we'll see from this year or last year. So I'm in the same boat as you. 6 feels realistic. You talked about how you want to do a video, or you're going to do a video talking about Dylan Raiola this week. And a lot of people are excited for Dylan, but more important than just the first string quarterback is the entire room, because over the past few years, Nebraska has not made it through an entire season healthy at that spot. And then you get to the last couple games of the season, and it's really hard to win when you're that banged up. I want to know what your thoughts are on Harburg. Where does he fit in with this offense? How big is his role? What do you expect to see out of him?
So he looks much improved throughout this offseason as a passer than he was a year ago. And again, 2 years ago, so the year prior before last season, he wasn't even in the quarterback's room. He wasn't learning the reads. He wasn't getting reps. He wasn't throwing the football. So I've talked about how I saw him as a true freshman. I saw his big arm. I saw what he could do. And my takeaway was this dude has the frame and the arm, like big time potential. Oh, by the way, he's way faster than anybody realizes at that point in time. And we've seen that. He even surprised me with how fast he was last year, even after my takeaways from what some of his freshman practices. But I was stunned by how his mechanics looked different last year. I talked about this ad nauseum. And the sidearm delivery and just everything was kind of funky. And I don't know that that's entirely on him, but they've clearly spent a bunch of time working on, and I'm not saying it's all fixed and it's all magically just delicious and 100% at this point, but it's vastly improved and he looks much improved. And he's clearly spent time watching film on the mental side of the game. His throwing mechanics do look better. They're not 100% where I'd like them to be just yet, but I don't know that any quarterback ever truly is. So I think he's a legit, okay, he's going to be probably the number 2 quarterback. I think he's a legit good backup quarterback. And even when Dylan is starting, okay, this is the Swiss Army knife player of this offense. He can be like a Taysom Hill and do a whole bunch of different things. And then all of a sudden he's in there a bunch and bam, now you run a trick play. Okay, kind of like they did with Luke McCaffrey in the double pass versus Iowa a few years ago that went for a touchdown. So there's a lot of things they can do with Harburg this year.
I remember back in the early mid 2000s, you had Tim Tebow over at Florida. He was a freshman and they worked him into the system. And I'm thinking maybe there's a chance for Nebraska to do some of that with him. Obviously, Harper's got to protect the ball. That's got to be his number one goal. But he has that skill set where he's a threat to throw it, but obviously he's an explosive runner. Flipping over to the other side of the ball, you're an expert on defense. So I wanted to know what you thought made the defense work so well last year, because there were a lot of people before Tony White came in or when he first got hired that questioned the 3-3-5 in the Big Ten and said, no, you can't win games with the 3-3-5. Is this year or is last year's success going to hold this year's teams back? I'm just curious on your thoughts on the 3-3-5 and what made it work, and if that's sustainable going forward.
Who would have questioned the 3-3-5? Who would do that? How could anybody? I did it. All right. How could anybody do that outside of me? In fairness, I had said for years, people would ask me 3-4, 4-3, what's better? I'm like, I've seen teams win national championships, Super Bowls with both, and then I would follow it up by saying, as long as you're not 4-2-5 or 3-3-5, we're good. Here comes Tony White with the 3-3-5, and I'm like, all righty, those words don't taste so great right now. I will say this: I would always put the caveat out there, okay, that the 4-2-5 was perfect for the Big 12 conference. So I would put that one caveat out there, but I put no caveat with the 3-3-5. Here's why it worked: they tackled immensely better. significantly better tackling. You could run the 11-0 or the 0-11, but if you ain't tackling, it doesn't matter. So they were incredibly improved at tackling a season ago. They, the way the way they flew around, the violence that they played with, the attitude that they played with made a huge difference. They have players with speed and talent, obviously, but they played even faster. If you know some of their 40 times and you know some of their agility times, they played even faster than some of those times, which is actually even more impressive considering they were in the first year of a scheme. So the 3-3-5, they showed last year that it can work. Now you got to keep in mind we didn't play a ton of dynamo offenses a season ago. So the best offenses we'll play this year: Ohio State, Colorado, USC. Those are probably the top three. The other 9 aren't so dynamo again. So this defense is going to be good to begin with. They have the opportunity to be even better. And it's been mentioned to me more than a few times. Their goal is to be a top, if not the top defense in the country this year. So that's a great goal. I love the goal. And they very well may or may achieve it. They may not. I don't know, but that's the mentality you got to have. And I think about the 3-3-5 almost similar to the old school Nebraska option offense. It was so unique. It was so different. People thought it was so simplistic and basic, and it was at its core, but they would change little things every week that made things completely different, especially with their blocking schemes. Okay. And I'll never forget, Amon Green told me this story, and then Rick Neuheisel was sitting right there. And it was Amon's, I think it's true freshman year, and they're getting ready to play Colorado. And Osborne comes up and says, we're gonna change this on the blocking scheme on the option. We're gonna run it first play of the game, and you're gonna run it for a touchdown. That's what's gonna happen. And then it happened. It was like a 50-yard touchdown. I've seen the play like a million times over the years. So oddly enough, Neuheisel brings up this play at Big Ten Media Days. And Amon's sitting there, Neuheisel, and I think it was myself and Jay Foreman. And he goes, and he brought up that play. He goes, you guys didn't do anything different. You were just really good at what you did. And Amon and I kind of looked at each other like, did we correct him? No, be nice. Okay. All right. Again, I had forgotten that he hadn't really tried to recruit me at that point, or I would have called him the hell out right then and there just for, revenge sake. But he left after we were done interviewing him. And I chatted. I said, Amon, you've told me about that play. He goes, yep. And that was the beauty of our scheme. It just looked the same to everybody, but these little nuances made it so complex and impossible to prepare for. The 3-3-5 is kind of similar. You can do so many things, so many variances, so many line studs, so many blitzes, so many, and then all of a sudden you're looking like you're blitzing and you're backing out, and then you're blitzing from the other side. And there's so many things you can do. It makes it complex. My question wasn't, could it be good? My question was, could it be good at stopping the run in the Big Ten? That was always my big question, because you got really small bodies. Are they going to play? And I mentioned violence a while ago. Are you going to play with enough violence and physicality and enough speed? Because the other side is going to have the side advantage. And Nebraska, it didn't phase them last year. And I think they're going to be even better next year. And as long as they're a good tackling team and they really want to emphasize forcing turnovers as well this year, they got the potential to be a really good defense.
Well, you weren't the only one who was questioning them. There were a lot of people questioning them, and they proved everybody wrong. So I am looking forward to this defense and how they're going to improve. I did a bold predictions video about a week ago, and I talked about some things that I thought could happen, but you need perfect execution if you're going to really accomplish all the goals I put out there. I got some hot takes from the comment section, and I wanted to share
Okay.
with you some of these. Give me or I want you to give me your reaction to them and tell me whether they're a hot take or they should be an expectation. We're going to start off
Okay.
with Thomas Fedoni scores more than 8 touchdowns. He had 6 last season. Hot take or expectation?
That's a tough one because they got more weapons on the outside than they did last year. I also think we're going to throw the ball a lot better than we did last year. At least I hope so. More than 8 or 8?
More than 8. 8, 9, whatever. We can say 8.
No. Because if
Let's
it's
say
more than
let's say
8,
8. Let's say 8. We'll go with
I
that.
think he can get 8.
Okay.
That was kind of the number in my head. Not saying he can't get more, but that's why I needed the clarification. I think 8 is very doable.
So we'll call that an expectation.
Okay.
Dylan Raiola will play will play well enough that he's a Heisman contender going into the offseason. Now remember, Adrian Martinez did this his true freshman year despite that team only winning 4 games.
All right. I was going to respond to the Adrian thing because I hated that going into year 2, but I'll leave that. I'll let that lie. Will he be a Heisman contender? I watched this video, by the way, so I don't remember all these off the top of my head, but I do remember that one. To say that's an expectation, I don't wanna say that that's an expectation, because my expectations for Dylan this year are to throw more touchdowns than interceptions, are to complete at least 60% of his passes, are to run the offense so that we don't snap the ball into the guy going in motion, are to do the little things to keep the chains moving, because that's all we need right
Yeah,
now. I
100%.
don't wanna put more than that on the true freshman. Does he have the potential to be a Heisman candidate going into year 2, much like Adrian Martinez? Absolutely. I just don't wanna put that out in the universe, and I know you did, and I love it. I just 2 of us putting it out there, I don't know, man. I don't hate it. I think it's very possible, honestly. I just I don't wanna put that out
We're
there
going to
too,
call that
man.
one a
I
hot take.
Yes,
Hot take.
yes,
Okay, that's fair. One receiver finishes with over 1,000 yards.
yes.
So that's an expectation.
I know I give these long soliloquies and then I just say yes out of nowhere. I think that's very realistic.
Okay. Harburg passes, runs, and catches a touchdown. Eric Crouch did it.
All in the same game like
No,
Crouch or
no, no,
just in
no,
the
no, no,
same
no,
year?
no. Same year.
I think he can do it throughout the year, yes.
Is that an expectation? Something you think will happen?
Oh, see, when you say expectation, that means I expect it to happen
Hey,
versus it's very possible to happen.
I mean, very possible to happen could be an expectation. I mean, in my eyes, I think that's very likely. Passes and runs
I'll
for
go
a
with yes.
touchdown, I think are guarantees.
Yeah,
The
I'll
catches
go
a
with yes.
touchdown's a little bit tougher. Okay. The last one I have is Nebraska beats Wisconsin, Iowa, or USC this season. Is that a hot take or an expectation?
One of those 3?
One of those three.
Yes.
Got to win one. I think that's totally fair. All right, I've got some
Yes.
subscriber questions next. Cole
Okay.
asked, "Why does it seem as though JUCO has become a relic? Sure, we take some players from there, but it isn't it as good of an option as taking guys from the transfer portal?" He asked this because Nebraska's taken 23 transfers since Rule took over versus only taking 2 or 3 JUCO players.
I think a lot of the guys that could go the JUCO route are going G5 because now there is the transfer portal. And if you go G5, you're gonna get paid a little bit, but then it's easier to transfer to a Power 4 or Power 2 school in reality and get paid the big bucks. If you're coming up from JUCO, you're not gonna make hardly anything at all in JUCO, if anything at all, but then you're a little less proven, okay? And so it's gonna be harder to get that money when and if you do transfer.
That's fair. Lance wants to know your favorite rivalry game experience or your best moment from a rivalry game when you were at Nebraska.
Oh, the last game I played in Memorial Stadium always has a soft spot in my heart. It was the last game in Memorial Stadium. It was versus Colorado. I was fortunate enough to get a couple of sacks that day. My sister actually married in to a Colorado bus family, and as wonderful as those folks can be sometimes, much love, everybody. They would talk trash to me nonstop year round, and it was just never ending.
While you were a
And so
player?
yes. And it was, I don't wanna call it loving trash because it wasn't loving trash, but it wasn't, like, insultive type trash, you know? It was kinda like we're extended family type trash, so they didn't cross any lines or anything, but I always felt like I always ended up playing some of my best games versus Colorado, and there's just to be a raging a-hole, I would send them, "Hey, thanks. I played a great game because of you, you know? I appreciate it," or "I felt like I played
Extra
great." So,
motivation.
yeah, but that last game, we won, uh we were going to the Big 12 championship versus Oklahoma. I felt like I played well, and I was the last player to leave the field. I was in no hurry to leave the field. I was by far the last player to leave the field, and as I walked off, you know, it was kinda cool. Some of the students, in the student section started cheering me, so that's something that always kinda lives, fondly in my memory bank.
Did you leave after your junior year or did you stay through your senior?
I stayed through my senior year. I remember having a conversation with my dad because I was projected to be like the 21st pick or whatever if I had left after my junior year. It was about a 5-minute convo, didn't take long, and I decided to come back.
That's awesome. Okay, Jack brought up how Scott Frost always used to tell the media that the team practiced really hard. I remember him telling us how guys were throwing up. But Matt Rule's more open about when the team is struggling, like he was the other day. Does that openness give you more confidence, or does it make you think there's a reason to worry because there might be issues going on internally? And I think the main point here is, do you think Rule's trying to downplay how good the team is and not set crazy expectations, or is he just openly a little bit honest with all us and the media?
I think he's just a little bit more open and honest. That's just how he is. That's just if you chat with him, if you know anybody who chats with him on a regular basis, that's just kind of how he is. Like if you watch my show and you listen to my show, I'm a fairly open book. And I think he's a little bit more that way. There's nothing wrong with what Frost did, other than it became annoying when we heard about how well they practiced and then it didn't go well on Saturdays. So it was kind of hard to believe it. But Saban, when he coached, he wouldn't give you anything. Belichick wouldn't give you anything. They're not going to tell you anything. And I think Scott Frost was trying to take that approach. But after a while, if the wins or the games on Saturday don't match what you're saying about practice, it's hard to believe it. I like Rule's approach because if you sit here and just talk about how well everybody's doing, the expectations become unrealistic. If you only point out where you're struggling, well, that's not going to go great either. I think he's just like, hey, we did this good. This wasn't as great. We're working to get better. And I think that's the perfect approach.
Yep, there's no BS, and it gives us a clear idea of, what's actually going on, which is this team's learning, they're growing, they're going to struggle, but they're getting better every day. So I didn't notice this, but there was a comment saying what or asking, why did the defense struggle to have meaningful production at the jack linebacker position, and what do we need to see happen or what do we need to see happen for that to change? And I think they brought this question up because Bayer, Prince Will, and Sherman combined for 62 tackles and 3 sacks compared to the inside linebackers who were averaging 45 tackles and 2 sacks each.
Yeah, so I mean, in year one in a new defense, there's going to be positions, that surprise you. Like the D lines pleasantly surprised the crap out of me last year. I mean, we knew Nash had the potential to play well. I had no idea about the other defensive end, but Ty was the only one with any real playing experience, including Nash. And then not only did the starters play well, but then Cam Lenhart, a freshman, comes up and plays well, and a lot of these guys play well. So that was a pleasant surprise. And then you look at, maybe the jack wasn't as productive. So it's kind of a building process. It's not all going to fall into place, fall into line right away. I think MJ Sherman's, he's got a lot of athleticism. Prince Will, Yulin, he's got a lot of talent and ability. Like one of those guys basically just needs to step up and play up to their potential. Because when I think about talent, potential, and ability to do things, those are two of the top 10 guys on the entire team, just from an athletic ability standpoint. And sometimes there's a connection, a direct connection sooner rather than later from ability to production on the field. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time. And hopefully this is the season they start to put it together.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And you've got guys who all three of those either were in their first year starting or their first year at Nebraska altogether. So getting a little bit adjusted should mean they're going to be in for a bigger year. The last question from the comments, Sam asked, what's your biggest concern about this team going into the season?
First of all, I'm going to come back to your question. I forgot what shirt I was wearing. Did you ever see Napoleon Dynamite back in the day?
Of course.
Connor.
That's awesome.
Your thoughts.
I like that
I
shirt.
forgot I had this on. I was like, I got to point this out. All right, I digress. My biggest concern, I'm going to go, it's a position of the most excitement of any position on the team. It's also the biggest concern because we need the biggest improvement, and it's also a true freshman. It's the quarterback position. Okay, if I'm going to go away from the obvious, which is quarterback position, I'm going to go right back to the offensive line. We, for 10 years, almost 10 years, 8 or 9 seasons, I've used the P word, potential, for the offensive line, because every year we have the ability to do good things, but we haven't done them yet, which is how I define potential. And this year, we have so many guys who started so many games, from Ben Scott to Ben Hart to Micah Mazuka to Turner Corcoran to all these individuals. I actually think I know Latufsky's going to be, if he's not back yet, he's going to be back soon. Best wishes to Prohaska. But Justin Evans Jenkins is a guy at guard who has as bright a future as anybody as he grows and matures and gets older. He's only a sophomore right now. I look at the offensive line. I see a ton of experience. I see size. I see highly recruited guys. I see a position coach in his third year as the position coach. And it's like, potential is not the appropriate word this year. There's too much experience on that offensive line. Expectations. I expect you to be better. Like, it's time to have expectations of that offensive line being better. What does that mean? I don't know. But if you aren't at least average, which we were above average in run blocking and below average in pass blocking last year, which was in itself kind of an improvement. Okay, but if you aren't at least average at pass blocking and above average in run blocking, you have not met my expectations. I'm not asking for much here, okay? But that is what I expect, and I think that's fair with all the experience across the board.
Yeah, I think that's one of all of our concerns because you've got this new quarterback who's in, and as long as he can be protected, he should be able to make plays. Moving over to our last few questions. It's about the opening week. Nebraska's a 4 touchdown favorite. They haven't won an opener since like 2019. Do you think they cover and win comfortably, or do you think this is going to be more of a stressful game since that team is going to come in fiery and want to beat up on Nebraska, obviously, and you've got so much newness on that offense?
4 touch I haven't looked at UTEP at all yet. They're a 4 touchdown favorite right now, the Huskers are?
Yep.
I I don't care. I I'll answer your question. I haven't looked because I don't care. Like, I don't wanna win by 2 or 3. I wanna win. Okay, that'd be much better than losing. But I don't wanna win by 2 or 3. Of course, Matt Rhule at Big Ten Media Days was like, "I hope it's close, and I hope we win because then we're learning how to win close games." In the back of my mind, I'm like, "Yeah, but not against UTEP. Not against UTEP." Especially a UTEP team that was not very good, does not have a lot of people coming back, and has a new head coach.
Right.
I don't agree. But I'm not getting paid $9 million a year to be the head coach in Nebraska. But my thoughts are whether they cover 28 or more, or whether it's 3 touchdowns or whatever. For me, I want to see a team that looks better up front, a quarterback that takes care of the ball, and a defense that's forcing turnovers. And if we do that versus UTEP, like if we win by 3 scores or more, I'm happy. If we win by 17, I guess that's 3 possessions. I'm happy. If it starts to get closer than that, maybe I'm a little bit concerned. 28 or more, I mean, let's like have a winning record for the first time in umpteen years first.
So you're saying that you think this is going to be a little bit of a comfortable win. They're winning by at least 14. You don't think this is a game we're going to have to sweat out.
I mean, they could very easily win by 28 or more. I'm just saying, you put. I just want a solid win. I don't want to have any drama in the second half,
Yep.
and if that happens, I'm good.
I feel pretty comfortable in saying that this is going to be at least a 14-point victory, and I don't think this is one that's going to be stressful. I mean, it might be in the beginning when we're trying to hammer things out, but as it gets later into the game, I don't think we're going to be sweating over it and thinking, God, this is a game we could actually lose. So now
I
you've
hope not.
got, let's say you've got the game under control, hypothetical, going into the fourth quarter. Nebraska's up 28, 35, whatever. What's the QB split at that point? Do you think Rule keeps Dylan in? Does he switch over to Harburg? Does he rest both of them since he knows how valuable a healthy quarterback is late into the season? I guess my question is, what's Rule going to do about protecting his QBs, and how much does he let those two play before he moves on to a Jalen Gramstad or even a Daniel Kalen?
I think you try to play Dylan as much as you possibly can because he needs the experience, especially with a big time game just a week away. In Colorado, they're playing on a Thursday night, so they're going to have an extra couple of days to prepare and put content out for clicks. Yeah, I said it. My point is simply this: he needs to get as much experience as possible, but that also means you got to keep your starting O-line out there. You can't put the second stringers out there with your true freshman quarterback that you need healthy. So I do think at a certain point, if we are ahead comfortably, you get Heinrich in there. And I don't know exactly what his plan is with Kalen, if they're going to try to redshirt him or not, 4 games or less. Maybe you put him out there, that helps make the decision or not. I think you try to play Dylan as much as you possibly can. But obviously, at some point, if you are winning comfortably, you got to build depth with everyone else too.
It's fair. Well, my last question, very hot topic as of recent. It's about alternate uniforms. So yesterday I posted up a video where I built the 2021 Nebraska helmet that they wore against Buffalo. It came out amazing. It's a great video. But people want to know what your favorite alternate uniform is that Nebraska's worn, number one. And number two, what would you like to see from a Nebraska alternate going forward? Would you like to see a black mixed in, go with some all reds? Do you like that all white look? What's your ideal alternate uniform if you were the one to pick?
All right. Every time I give my honest feelings on this, I find how truly alone I am in the world because I don't like the alternate uniforms. You look at Alabama. You look at Penn State, you look at other than the Irish green uniforms, which again have their own tradition at Notre Dame. You look at Notre Dame, you look at all these traditional blue bloods that have had success over time. They don't have to do what Oregon did. Oregon was given puke colors. They had no choice but to do what they've done, and they've turned it into pure gold. God bless them. I don't like trying to be like the cool kids, because if you're truly a cool kid, you don't have to try to conform to anyone else. I like Nebraska's normal uniforms, and that's what I prefer. And every time I say that, I get shouted down, and I realize how alone I am on this hill, and that's okay.
You're
Now,
not. You're not. There are old
not,
guys who agree with you.
oh, you said old. I mean, I'll do respect to the older generation, but that's a dig in of itself, man. Come on.
Trust me, I know the comments are gonna be like, I agree with Adam. And hey, what
Okay.
you just explained was so spot on. And it's such a flex to be able to say, man, we don't need any alternates. We don't need that for a
Exactly.
recruiting boost because we're Nebraska. I love it. I personally really enjoy the alternates because I like seeing the flash and I like seeing the different colors, but I respect your position. I agree with it. And I think if you're the University of Nebraska, you don't need any of that shit. You've got it going on with the best of the best already being worn.
I appreciate it. All right. I feel a little less alone in the universe.
Yeah, trust me,
So
there are
I
other
will
guys who agree.
Yeah, I will answer the second part, which is which, alternate uniform would I pick? Okay. And I'm going to be completely 1000% biased. The black throw the bones uniforms. That's what I like. You can figure out why. I don't like the alternate uniforms to begin with. If I'm going to have to pick one, I'm going to go with the black shirts alternate uniforms.
That's fair. All right, Adam. Well, we got to 40 minutes. People asked for like a full length podcast. They said, Connor, you've got to do longer videos with Adam. And I said, okay. Next time Adam and I do a video, we'll make sure it's at least 40 minutes. So it's like a podcast. And we delivered today. Thank you for being here. Do you have anything else that you want to mention, bring up, talk about what you have coming out this season?
Yeah, so I'm actually pretty excited. So the family and I moved this past summer to be right here in Lincoln for multiple different reasons. And first of all, it's already like home. It's been a while since I've been directly in Lincoln, already like home. The kids are loving their new schools, etc. But it's going to make a lot of the things that I do a lot easier. Okay, so we're going to be putting out, so the Chronicles comes back this Sunday, August 25th, 6 p.m. Central Time. It's going to make interviews easier. We're going to be doing more content. The website has already gone from 6 content contributors. It's exploded, honestly, up to 25. And then I've got 3 more shows that have hit me up. And so I go through the process of vetting them. Is it a good fit for the website or not? And so it's just going to be growing. We're just going to be doing more and more. We're going to cover more and more press conferences. We're going to be doing more and more highlight videos. And honestly, I plan on doing, I don't want to go crazy with the amount of Chronicles that I'm doing, but just being here. I've covered the team, I don't want to say from afar, but outside of Lincoln, it creates challenges. It's 1,000 times easier here. And so the amount of things that we're going to be able to do is just through the roof. So Carriker Chronicles on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do it. CarrikerChronicles.com is the website. Connor contributes to the website. He does a phenomenal job. Dude, I just joined the world of TikTok. So follow me on TikTok. I had an Instagram account that was basically dead. I hadn't posted in 7 years. I posted for the first time about 3 or 4 weeks ago in 7 years on Instagram. And then obviously Facebook and X, I've always been pretty active there.
That's awesome. All right. Well, yeah, guys, underneath this video in the description box, you've got Carriker Chronicles right there. The links so you guys can subscribe to it. Make sure you are, because I'm telling you, Adam does an amazing job with his content. And right after you watch mine or after you watch his, usually you end up watching one of the others since it's in your suggested content. Adam, thank you for being here. You shared a bunch of good insight. We love hearing your stories. It's always a good time having you on. But that's all we've got for today. So until next time, I think, Adam, what's your tagline? Throw the bones?
Yeah, until next time, always remember to throw the ball.
And go Big Red.